As you know, I'm an absolute believer in Bitcoin and its future. I spent the last year clarifying some of the misunderstandings that many people have. We call them FUD: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. From Bitcoin's energy consumption, quantum computing and tulip mania, to illicit activities, Tether, scaling the network, and volatility concerns. Today, on the other hand, I want to talk about a subject that I can't really dissolve that easily: the Bitcoin security budget. Or more accurately, what happens when miners are not rewarded with the block subsidy any longer. First, some context around mining and why it is necessary in Bitcoin. I won't go into detail here as I want to keep the video focused on the main question. If you want to learn more about mining, you can check out my in-depth video about it, where I explain it in 3 difficulty levels. Mining is an essential part in securing the Bitcoin network. The energy used in proof of work makes the blockchain hard to change, which is necessary to have a record of the ledger that everyone can trust. Now, to guarantee this security, miners need to be incentivized. They need to get something in exchange for expending energy. They get Bitcoin. Roughly every 10 minutes a new block gets mined, and the miner of the block gets rewarded through the block subsidy and additional transaction fees. Bitcoin is disinflationary, which means the rate of newly created Bitcoin gets reduced over time. Every 4 years it gets cut in half, so that in 2140 the maximum amount of just under 21 million Bitcoin is reached. No more will ever be created. So the relevant question to ask here is, what happens when that happens? How are miners incentivized at this point? And you may think, well, this is so far into the future, why do we really care now? But it is necessary to think about it right now, because how do we even get there? How will miners be incentivized on the way? Already 90% of the supply are mined. As I said, the inflation rate gets lower and lower. Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, had an answer to this. In a few decades, when the reward gets too small, the transaction fee will become the main compensation for miners. Bitcoin core developer Gregory Maxwell adds, fee pressure is an intentional part of the system design and, to the best of the current understanding, essential for the system's long-term survival. The thing is, this is not set in stone. This is just an assumption of how market participants will act, including those who want to transact over the network and those who want to secure the network. And so far, trends are not really mirroring this assumption. In late 2020, Bitrefill's head of research wrote the following: as BTC's fees have gone up recently, it's been interesting to see that LTC, so Litecoin, not Lightning, has been seeing increasing payments on Bitrefill. This was previously noticed by Paul Stork, the creator of Drive Chains, who on top of that is a great writer on all things Bitcoin. He definitely has a point here regarding Litecoin as a go-to choice whenever Bitcoin's fees got high. However, I would argue that so far you can only call this circumstantial evidence, but not a clear causality yet. In an article called Security Budget in the Long Run, published in February 2019, he lays out why fees on the Bitcoin network might not go up. This chart shows the Bitcoin transaction fees over time. Compare this with the total hash rate of the network, a good indicator for the security of the network, since an attacker would need to amass at least 51% of the total hash rate. As you can see, the hash rate is pretty much up only, besides the China mining exodus last year. Fees are not up only, they are not even up. Fee pressure is not visible, at least not yet. We see that BTC's crossing of the $1 per transaction line in May of 2017 coincides with the rise of altcoins. We also see that the pressure of late 2017 quickly cancelled itself out, and then some. Finally, we see that this release of pressure coincided with a sudden and unprecedented decline in BTC transactions. He continues, to me, this data refutes the theory that users will pay high BTC fees willingly. In fact, they seem to have only ever paid high fees unwillingly during the brief bubble time of relative panic and FOMO. If that theory is indeed false, then total fees will not be any higher in USD terms than they are today. If the consumer is cost conscious and will only pay the lowest transaction fees, then how can we get those numbers up? And this is the key to the initial question. If users are unwilling to pay higher transaction fees over time, then Satoshi's assumption simply becomes wrong and Bitcoin's security model is in danger. Historically, Bitcoin's price has gone up dramatically each halving cycle, and miners follow the price. What if the halving cycles become less relevant or Bitcoin stagnates for a longer time, because of stronger FUD or other factors? The security of the network would weaken. One thing you could argue here is that institutions would join the mining game even if they would make losses on the mining itself. Their incentive could be protecting their own investments. This is quite a stretch though in my opinion, and we are not close to a situation like that. Fees will be of the highest importance to keep the network secure for the long run. What are some potential fee sources that are not fully in effect so far? Lightning Network. I think I had a misunderstanding here for quite some time. I always believe that Lightning will lead to lower fees on the base layer since more transactions will be performed through payment channels that don't need final settlement for a while, so blocks are less full. But this is not necessarily true, because what Lightning ultimately does is that it allows for many transactions to fit into one final settlement. This could actually have a positive effect on fees, because the willingness to pay a higher fee instead of using an altcoin gets stronger if that fee is not for a single transaction, but for many of them instead. The immediate effect of this is to lower on-chain transactions, but the ultimate effect is to increase them. Lightning Network boosts on-chain fees by increasing the utility of each on-chain transaction, by allowing each to do the work of many transactions, and by therefore making high on-chain fees more tolerable to the end user. Increasing the economic density of transactions is likely the best approach to make people pay higher fees, and the economic density of transactions has clearly gone up over the last years. The estimated transaction value is even a lot higher than during the bubble in 2017. The long-term effects, however, are still very much unknown. It's still anyone's guess. Another idea I recently talked about is blind merge mining sidechains. I covered BIP300 and BIP301 in my video about Bitcoin's future. Merged mined sidechains do whatever altcoins can do, but without the need to purchase a new token, so they have infinitely lower exchange rate risk and are more convenient for users. On top of that, merged mined sidechains send all transaction fees they collect to Bitcoin miners. Under blind merged mining, they do this without requiring any users or miners to run the sidechain node software. Nic Carter once held a presentation at the MIT about Bitcoin's security model, and it has a nice wrap-up with the key takeaways.
Just to briefly summarize, we're not exactly sure what Bitcoin's security model is outside of the kind of straightforward explanations Satoshi gives us. There is a feeling in the community that it is the threshold model, that Bitcoin is just assumed secure at some level of security expenditure. I'm actually not sure if that's the case. If Bitcoin is a very valuable system, that means it's very valuable to attack. So the more valuable it gets, there's a concept that perhaps you should spend more in security. But I believe that it's sort of universally acknowledged that a vibrant and stable fee market is sort of necessary for long-term security. Arvind Naranian has a paper where they talk about the instability of the miner revenue in the long term if fees are zero or fees are erratic. And so, I think it's probably defensible to say that that there should be some eminent fee pressure on Bitcoin in the long term. But the question is, can Bitcoin be considered a premium place to transact? And probably most of the people in this room think it is, and I would agree. But can it retain that premium in the face of lots of competitors? That is the question that will, determine whether people are willing to pay fees or not. And my suggestion is that we should think about use cases that enhance the semantic and economic density, whether that's making large transactions on the base layer, those are economically dense transactions, or other potential protocols that are willing to pay higher fees. Those are kind of the keys to maximizing the long-term security budget, in my opinion.
So, what's my conclusion? The future of Bitcoin's security, or security model, is not entirely clarified yet. In my opinion, it's wrong to say that Bitcoin will definitely fail once the block subsidy is very low. At the same time, it's wrong to say that this is not an issue and nothing worth discussing. It's one of these few things for which I believe we will find a solution, but it's not one of the completely idiotic FUD topics that you can dismantle in a few minutes. I'm also interested in your opinion on this. Is this a problem? Is this not a problem? Have you read something about it that you could share that I maybe haven't read? That would be great. And if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe to the channel for further content. And then I see you next time.